Yesterday, Russia carried out a barbaric missile attack into a Ukrainian residential neighborhood that killed 19 people, including 9 children. One of them was only 3 years old. Now, today we're going to talk about what we know so far, to include the stories that Russia is already spinning about this, because this is getting a lot of attention, understandably so, not the least bit, because 9 children were killed. And there were already memorials popping up on the playground where they lost their life, which is just hard to fathom as a father myself. But we're also starting to see folks in the Russian camp present this as a conspiracy, a false flag put together by Ukraine. The facts just don't add up. So we're going to look at what they're saying as well, because it's relatively easy to disprove. And while I disagree with the points they're putting out, I feel like it's at least worth addressing head on. Now, starting out here from the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, they say on the evening of April 4th, Russia struck Kryvyi Rih with a Iskander-M ballistic missile. My apologies in the pronunciation of the town. I think I'm getting that correct, Kryvyi Rih, but I have seen a couple different pronunciations. They say the missile hit a residential area and a children's playground. At least 19 people were killed, including 9 children, and wounded 68 more. Now, we do have some footage of this event. I'm going to play some of that, the bits that I can, because it's rather graphic. You have children bleeding out in the video, so we're not going to show that. I will link in the description below a couple sources that show the full body cam footage and a couple other sources if you want to see those and share those to get an understanding of what happened here. But I wanted to start with a map to show you where this location is, because it is not right along the front. Mind you, Kryvyi Rih, which, again, I hope I'm getting that pronunciation correct, as we move in here on the map, you'll see it down here to the to the west of Zaporozhye. Let me zoom out a little bit and back in so you can see it. Right where the hand is on the map, Kryvyi Rih, right here. So it's not right on the front. This is not a contested area. This is, we'll use the ruler to check, but from the 70 plus kilometers from the line of contact, this is not an area in direct fire range of armed forces. They've not evacuated this location. There's still people there living their lives, trying to go on like normal in a situation that, of course, is far from normal, to include children playing on the playground and being killed while doing so. Now, turning to the Russian response here, they immediately put out a statement, and I'll put it up on the screen here, from their Ministry of Defense. They said, today on 4th April, 1849, the Russian armed forces delivered a precision strike with a high explosive missile at a restaurant in Kryvyi Rih, where commanders of formations and Western instructors were meeting. As a result of the strike, the enemy lost up to 85 servicemen and officers of foreign countries, as well as 20 motor vehicles. I've seen that number get up to 40 motor vehicles, and again, 80 soldiers apparently killed in this strike. I've looked through the footage a couple times. There may or may not be a restaurant in that location. It's hard to tell. And of course, we can't assume that we get all of the angles from a couple different clips of video. But I don't know how we're missing 20 burning military vehicles with all the different clips and pictures that we're seeing. And could there have been service members in this area? No doubt. Ukraine is a nation at war. But again, foreign officers from countries, we've heard this countless times from Russia. They just make it up. Like, how many times are we going to hear this thing and not just shame them for lying through their teeth? Does anybody remember the time towards the start of the war where it was something crazy like 350 NATO officers were killed in a missile strike in Western Ukraine, and people ran with it? But even the footage that they were using to say that this strike occurred was from Syria in like 2017. Start to finish, it was completely made up. So when you hear large groupings of foreign officers towards the front line that just happen to be in residential areas, just when do we just stop believing everything they say? Would be a question I would have. Now, turning to some responses here from President Zelenskyy, who's put out quite a bit in the last couple days here, understandably so. He said, quote, the missile struck an area near residential buildings, hitting a playground and regular streets. They are nothing but inhuman scumbags, anyone who can do such things. There are no decent words to describe these Russian bastards. Keeping quiet about the fact that it is Russia that is killing children with ballistic missiles is wrong. It is dangerous. It only incites the scum in Moscow to continue the war and to continue to ignore diplomacy. Weakness has never ended a war. Therefore, I'm grateful to every country whose representatives spoke out. Leaders, foreign ministers, embassies. Russian ballistic missiles on the street of an ordinary city, on a residential building, and after this strike, an additional strike with drones. Another person died and they're still wounded. Russia must be held accountable for everything it has done. We need to put pressure on them here, really put pressure. Don't waste time on empty talk to end this war. So a couple keynotes there. Zelenskyy talked about how there's this double tap type strike, which we've heard of throughout this war. The idea there is that a missile strike or a large munition comes in, hits a location, and then 10 to 40 minutes later, as you would expect first responders to be showing up to put out the fire and evacuate the wounded, a second wave of strikes comes in, specifically targeting the first responders. I'd not seen that referenced anywhere else, but Zelenskyy says that one more person was killed in that follow-on strike. Now, I do want to turn over to the Russian mill blogger statements here because, again, we have a wide range of explanations is probably the best way to put it, starting with Urasumi. He says, quote, "I sincerely regret that civilians were killed, but these were random victims. According to my information, they targeted the restaurant and they hit it exactly. Also, according to my information, at the time of the strike, there were up to 15 all-terrain vehicles with guards around the restaurant, and in the restaurant itself, a meeting of the command staff of the Ukrainian armed forces and foreign mercenaries was taking place. And at the moment, the bodies of more than 40 servicemen have already been pulled from under the rubble, and the cars parked nearby were destroyed by the strike." So again, Russia has conducted strikes all across Ukraine throughout the duration of this war. They have carried out a couple strikes that have been incredibly costly for Ukraine and have taken large numbers of casualties. But anytime you start to hear about foreign leaders involved towards the front like this, just be cautious. Also, we don't have any footage or pictures of the soldiers coming out, or a mass casualty event with all these military vehicles burned and destroyed on the sidewalk. And when you look at some of the footage that we did have, these people aren't wasting time. They're not getting there. In fact, one of the arguments from the Russian mill bloggers is they had this information way too quick. In fact, it's worth getting to that here in a second. Alex Parker Returns, which is kind of a radical pro-Russian Wagner supporter guy with a large audience on Telegram, said, quote, "This is not an Iskander missile. In Kryvyi Rih, they show the landing site of the Ukrainian air defense missile. This is obvious, even to a baby." Now, air defense missiles do come crashing down to Earth. We've seen that throughout this war, and they do cause damage if they were to land on something. But a couple of key points here. First off, we see a clear detonation in some of these videos. And the amount of damage, the widespread damage, would be a lot. This would have to be a malfunctioning surface-to-air missile that then detonates on ground just at the perfect location. Technically, it could be the case. I'm not trying to give them any possible credit here, but again, remember, they're coming up with these theories after the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed responsibility for this strike. So all these Russian mill blogger explanations are after the fact. They're just trying to paint this up to make it better than it actually is. Then another one here, Militarist, this one that I thought was really interesting. He said, quote, "What happened in Kryvyi Rih is clearly a deliberate provocation with the aim of accusing Russia of war crimes and disrupting peace talks. It is reported that the strike was carried out by an Iskander ballistic missile on a restaurant. This was first reported by the Ukrainian media themselves." Just a quick refresher, that was first reported by the Russian Ministry of Defense. That was the original source. They're the ones who said it. He said, "The speed of the Ukrainian and Western media's processing of the incident is indicative. Precise information about what happened and the number of victims appeared suspiciously quickly, literally a few minutes after the arrival. The Western news agency Associated Press identified the culprits within an hour. Of course, in their opinion, it was Russia. A missile detonates in Ukraine. Who do we think it's going to be? Like, this doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, right? This was during the course of ongoing attacks in multiple places across Ukraine. The warning had gone out that there was a missile attack inbound to this city. Russia claimed responsibility for firing missiles at this city. What is the investigation to place the blame on who fired the missile that blew up inside of the city? But also the point here, how they just knew too quick. Points to, again, we've got the first responders rushing to the scene, wasting no time. The incredibly brave first responders. We talked about those double tap strikes, right? They know what they're getting into. The attack might not be over. The worst might still be yet to come. And these guys are dropping everything and rushing to the scene to try to provide life-saving care. And in some cases they do. And tragically in this case, they were able to pull some people out and they weren't able to, in the end, save their lives. But does it look to you in the clips that we have here that this is taking some long time, that they're waiting for all the facts to organize? No, they're getting on the scene fast. That information is immediately shared. And when it's civilians, it comes out much, much faster. The reason for that is there's not operational security behind it. When you see a strike on the front lines or on an air base or something like that, that needs to sit tight because you don't want to tip the enemy's hand ever to find out, did you actually hit the target? Were you close? Oh, there was a commander there, or is an aircraft at that airfield you didn't know was there. It was successful or it was not successful. When civilian targets are hit, there's none of that that's necessary. You put it out as quick as possible because, quite frankly, in this case, and I don't mean this in a callous way, but this helps the Ukrainian cause of saying, look how awful the Russians are. So they would want to get this information out as fast as possible, and there's nothing preventing them from doing so because there's no operational security involved in a children's playground and residential neighborhood. So yeah, the information came out fast. The fact that Ukraine is able to report things quickly is not evidence of a conspiracy. I would argue that if this same type of thing happened in the United States, it would probably get out even faster. What do you know? Now, looking at some other responses here, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, posted on Twitter, quote, horrified that tonight a ballistic missile struck near a playground and restaurant in Kryvyi Rih. More than 50 people injured and 16 killed, including 6 children. This is why the war must end. Of course, that was right after the strike. We have seen updated numbers since then, 68 wounded, 19 killed, including 9 children now. And for what it's worth, we'll put the picture of the children back up here on the screen because this is one of the things in any conflict that always just hurts the most, the deepest, right? The people that don't have any choice. They're not the ones that want to fight this. They try explaining to a kid at some point why wars need to be fought. Right? They don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Here we are as parents telling kids, don't use violence, use your words. There's always ways to work things out. And meanwhile, they're caught in the middle of this and they don't have a choice. It's the worst part of war is when children get roped into it, hands down, across the board. And we're going to leave this picture up here for a second just as a reminder of the cost of this and other wars. President Zelenskyy responded to, in a statement, not directly to the tweet, but responded to Ambassador Brink pushing back. And the ambassador did get some criticism here about not mentioning Russia at all, kind of suggesting, something happened. It sucks that something happened in a war zone. Hate to see that. Zelenskyy said, quote, unfortunately, the response from the U.S. Embassy is surprisingly disappointing. Such a strong country, such a strong people, and yet such a weak reaction. They are afraid to even say the word Russian when speaking about the missile that murdered children. He's a valid point. Didn't we have that a few years ago where I can't even remember which direction it was in which administration, but it was that we couldn't say ISIS or somebody wouldn't say Islamic State or something. It was like you have to say their name if you're actually going to be serious about mitigating and eliminating this threat. This is a Russian missile. Zelenskyy continued by saying, yes, the war must end, but to end it, we must not be afraid to call things by their names. We must not be afraid to pressure the ones who continue this war and ignores all the world's proposals to end it. We must pressure Russia, the one shooting to kill children instead of choosing a ceasefire. There must be additional sanctions against those who cannot exist without ballistic strikes on their neighboring nation. We must do everything in our capacity to save lives, and we've discussed this, in particular with the American side. The additional air defense systems supplied to defend against precisely these types of missile attacks. We count on our agreements with the President of the United States who promised to help find more patriots. And we count on the strength of the world to overcome this evil, this war, this Russian aggression. And hopefully this does lead to more air defense assets entering Ukraine. That's one of the things that personally I feel like should be the least controversial of any military aid sent to a country that is exclusively defensive. Full stop. Like technically, I guess you could move an air defense asset forward and shoot down enemy planes, but if they're positioned back around this location or even further back inside of Ukraine, it is simply protecting the cities from protecting the civilians from Russian missile and drone attacks. And in this case, had there been a Patriot down in this location, I'd like to think that it would have been able to intercept that, and those 19 people would still be alive, including those 9 children, and the 3-year-old would have a long life still ahead. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.